Hi everyone, welcome to the Jayda InStitches show, and welcome to a crochet quick fix. Today we're going to make a brick stitch ear warmer. This is the ear warmer we made in a live stream a little while ago, and we promised a quick fix tutorial on how to make one for yourself or anyone you know. You can also add an optional applique to the front to decorate it a little bit if you want to. And if you like our little sunflower, this is the sunflower from our 2019 folk art calendar blanket. We've linked the tutorial for that down below as well. For an adult, you'll want no more than 50, that's 50 yards of a size 4 medium weight yarn. And if you're making it for a smaller head, ladies or teens or children or babies, you'll maybe need a little about 10 yards less the further down you go per size. So no more than 50 yards. I would recommend having that on hand just in case your tension is a little looser than mine. You want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and the hook I'm using is a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9 in the US. A size 5 if you've got old hooks from the United Kingdom. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. This brick stitch pattern worked in the round can be made over a foundation chain row that is any multiple of 3 plus 1 extra chain at the end. So if you want to make it for yourself, I recommend you start chaining sets of 3. I will be using 69 because that is the number that I used in the brick stitch beanie hat tutorial, and I've linked that tutorial down below for all of you to check out if you haven't made the hat yet. But you want to chain a length that fits snugly around your head, or when stretched equals the circumference measurement of the head you're making it for. Round that up to the nearest 3, so the nearest multiple of 3, in my case 69 is a multiple of 3, and then add 1 extra chain at the end. Once you've chained a foundation chain row that is any multiple of 3, double check that it fits snugly around your head, that's around the back, over the ears, and the two ends meet in the front of your forehead. Or if you're making it for someone else and you're making it from a circumference measurement, have your measuring tape handy. Make sure that that foundation chain, when stretched, equals the correct measurement. Just for reference, my head circumference is 22 inches, and when I lay out my measuring tape and I slightly stretch my foundation chain row, it equals 22 inches. It also fits neatly around my head. Then you will add 1 more chain. So now I have 70 chains. You want that 1 extra chain after the entire foundation chain has been created. Make sure that you haven't twisted your foundation chain. And then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first chain. Double check that it fits around your head by pulling it on over your ears, making sure that it goes around the back of the head and over your forehead. We will now begin the brick stitch. This is a 2-row repeater pattern. The first row is sort of small, we call that sort of the mortar part of the pattern, and the second row is taller, that's the brick stitch part of the pattern. And here we go. Every odd row begins with a chain 1 and a single crochet in the same place that you joined. So chain 1, single crochet in the same place that you joined. Chain 2, skip the next 2 chains and single crochet into the next chain. Chain 2, skip 2 chains, single crochet into the next chain. Chain 2, skip 2, single crochet into the next chain, and you're going to do that all the way around for row 1. You'll work your last single crochet, chain 2, skip the last 2 chains in that first foundation chain row. This little guy here is what we call the false stitch. It's technically what you get when you join a row when you're working in the round, but we're going to ignore the false stitch, and we're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet. And that is row 1 complete. You will have a series of little chain 2 spaces all the way around. The way to know how many you should have is to take your basic foundation chain number minus that extra 1 chain, so for me that was 69, and divide it by 3, and that would give me 23 little chain 2 spaces. So that's how you know how many chain 2 spaces you should have. For row 2, the even row, it's really simple. It's just double crochet. I'm going to find my working thread here. We chain 3 to begin. The chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and then we work 2 double crochet directly into the next chain 2 space. So every chain 2 space on an even row gets 2 double crochet. Then we come to the single crochet from the row before, and we double crochet into the top of that. So 2 double crochet into the chain 2 space, double crochet into the next stitch, and that's what you're going to do all the way around. You will have the same number of double crochet stitches in your even rows as you had foundation chains in your foundation chain row. So for example, I had 69 plus 1, that's 70 foundation chains. I will have 70 stitches, 70 double crochet stitches, that includes the little chain 3 at the beginning, at the end of row 2 and every even row. At the end of every even row, you work your last 2 double crochet into your last chain 2 space, find the chain 3 that began the row, and join with a slip stitch to the top of it. That is every even row. So 2 double crochet in every chain 2 space, a double crochet in every stitch, and that will have the same number of stitches in it as your full foundation chain row did. And the chain 3 that begins every even row counts as a double crochet. Then you're back to the odd row, chain 1, and single crochet in the same place that you joined the previous row. Every odd row begins this way. Chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, find the next one, and single crochet. Chain 2, skip 2, single crochet into the next stitch. That's every odd row, and this row ends with a slip stitch into the first stitch of the row, which was this little single crochet right here. That is the pattern. Odd, even, all the way up. For babies and children, I recommend working 6 rows of the pattern in total. For women or teens, I recommend working 8 rows of the pattern in total. And for men or much larger heads, I recommend working 10 rows of the pattern in total. We will regroup in a little while and do some measurements. Once you've worked 6 rows for babies and children, 8 rows for teens or ladies, or 10 rows for men, you can take out your measuring tape, measure from the top edge to the bottom edge. You're looking for 2.5 to 3 inches for babies or children, 3.5 to 4 inches for teens or ladies, 4.5 to 5 inches for men. If you haven't quite gotten to the desired height measurement, you can continue to repeat the little odd, even pattern until it measures what you need it to, and it does not matter what row you end on. You can end on an even row like I have here, you can end on an odd row, it doesn't matter, and if you like the look of ending on one row versus another, you can do that too. I'm going to end at 8 rows in total, and I'm going to snip my yarn, fasten off, and take a moment to weave in all my little tails. Next, we're going to make the little part of the ear warmer that pinches the front of the ear warmer together. Now this is optional. Some of you may not want to pinch it. You might just want to have a nice even rectangle of an ear warmer, in which case you are finished, or you can jump to adding a little bit of a decoration if you're so inclined. For the rest of us who want to create that cute little pinch in the front, we are going to grab our yarn and our hook, and we are going to start with a slip knot. We're all going to chain 5, single crochet into the second chain from the hook, single crochet into the next 3 chains. That will give us 4 single crochet at the end of row 1. If you are making the little pincher for a child or a baby's headband, you want to work chain 1, turn, single crochet in every stitch all the way across, chain 1, turn repeatedly until you have 9 rows of single crochet. For teens and ladies, you want to do this for 11 rows of single crochet, and if you're making it for a larger ear warmer, you want to do this for 13 rows of single crochet. Every row will have 4 single crochet in it. Remember to chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. At the end of row 9, row 11, or row 13, depending on the size you're making, do not chain 1, fasten off and leave yourself a long tail for sewing, and take a moment to weave in that short tail across the back of some of the stitches of row 1. Next, we're going to take our ear warmer. I like to use the seam part. There's a very little bit of a seam at the back, but I like to make this the actual front because then I can completely hide it underneath my little pincher. So I take the middle of it and I pinch it together, either out to the front or out to the back, and then I pinch the top and bottom parts on top of that. So I have a little bit of a bow shape going. I'm going to hold that with one hand and finger And I'm going to grab my little pincher and I'm going to wrap it all the way around that middle piece, just so I can get those two edges together. And I've threaded up the tail of my pincher in my yarn needle, and now I'm just going to sew through a foundation chain and the last row of stitches. So there's 4 of them all the way across, 4 little sets. Making sure I get a good chunk of both edges. And because I don't want this to go anywhere, I'm just going to repeat that going backwards. There we go. Make a little knot. This way I know it won't come undone. There we go. As tight as you can make it. And then you can weave that tail in a little bit across some of those other stitches. And if you have a lot of tail left over, you can trim any excess. Next, you want to just twist it so that it's on the seam of your pincher is on the inside of your ear warmer. And then you can fuss with it a little bit so that it looks a bit like a bow. Now you can also be finished here if you don't want to add any other extras. I am going to add our little sunflower applique right to the pincher. Of course, you could decorate this any way you wanted. You could add bows or different kinds of appliques. If you are adding an applique, I'm going to show you a quick way to just sew it on. So I've left a long tail on the center of my sunflower. And I can do one of two things. I can sew all the way through to the other side, which will help pinch that part of the hairband together and also stop this little pincher from wanting to roll around. Or if I don't want this yarn to show, I can just grab pieces of the pincher, so the stitches down below, and then come right out through the middle of my little sunflower. So I'm going through the sunflower, running my needle underneath some of the stitches. And this doesn't have to be super neat and tidy. Little tiny appliques like this aren't going to go anywhere. I'm going to sew all the way around the center of my little flower. And that will leave my little petals to sort of float around in the wind. I like that effect. And once I am back around at the beginning, I'm going to do one more stitch for good measure. And I'm going to knot my sewing yarn on the back of my little applique. Make a little knot. And I can weave that tail in a couple times through some of those stitches. But I know it's not going to come undone because there's not going to be a lot of weight or pressure on my little applique. But if you're using a slippery yarn, you might want to consider weaving in it a few more times. You can trim any excess. And you're all done. Do any last little finishing tweaks. And there you go. One cute little brick stitch ear warmer all ready for the fall. We hope you enjoyed our little ear warmer tutorial today. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, stay crafty, and we'll see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches Show. Bye everyone!
Hi everybody! Mr. and Stitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.